We are in Quaint St Augustine, the pride of Florida and the oldest permanent white settlement in the United States, where the architecture of old Spain has been faithfully reproduced and preserved as one of the most colorful heritages of North America. Approaching St. Augustine by way of the Bridge of Lions, one gets the impression of entering an old world city, in the center of which is the famous Ponce de Leon Hotel, a monument to the memory of the late Henry M. Flagler, brilliant organizer and wealthy railway magnate who devoted much of his time and fortune toward recreating the glory of old Spain in St. Augustine. The patio of the Ponce de Leon Hotel is occasionally romanticized by native descendants of the original Spanish families who don the costumes of their ancestors and proudly bring to life the colorful spirit of old Spain. In the mausoleum of the Presbyterian Church, which he built in memory of his daughter, are the mortal remains of Henry M. Flagler, the great benefactor of St. Augustine. Religion has always been a sustaining influence in the historic development of this quaint city, which traces its foundations back to the latter part of the 16th century and still preserves in the archives of its old cathedral manuscript records which reveal the colorful story of St. Augustine. In the year of 1565, on St. Augustine's Day, Pedro Menendez, with a company of Spanish soldiers and a priest, landed near this locale and established the first permanent settlement in the United States, 55 years before the Pilgrims arrived at Plymouth Rock. And this historic event is commemorated today by the celebration of Mass, which is attended by native sons of St. Augustine, who reenact the first Mass as it was believed to have been performed by the Spaniards. Another colorful episode reenacted by the sons of St. Augustine is that of Ponce de Leon in quest of the Fountain of Youth. According to history, Ponce de Leon, governor of Puerto Rico, heard about a miraculous spring located on an island to the north, the waters of which would restore one's youth. And being very desirous of becoming young again, he fitted out 3 caravels at his own expense and set sail. It is said that he landed in this vicinity on Easter Sunday in 1513 and discovered the fabled Fountain of Youth. Whether or not the water he drank made him young again is controversial, but the fact remains that Ponce de Leon immortalized man's eternal quest for the Fountain of Youth. And today in St. Augustine, the spirit of this story is kept alive by the Fountain of Youth, which still flows for the benefit of all those who would travel the path of a romantic tradition. This fabled shrine, enhanced by numerous other relics of St. Augustine, attracts thousands of visitors annually who lift their cups as we do now and drink to the ideal of eternal youth and the joy of living. Returning to the more factual history of St. Augustine, we drive down the oldest street in the city and we behold what is said to be the oldest schoolhouse in North America. Everything in St. Augustine seems to be endowed with an atmosphere of age and tradition, but nothing deserves more distinction than the oldest house, from the balcony of which fly the flags of 4 countries, all of which have flown in their turn over this historic shrine. The old slave market is another of St. Augustine's many historic landmarks. But let us diverge for a moment from the past and turn to some of the modern attractions, one of the most interesting of which is what is reputed to be the world's largest alligator and ostrich farm. We arrive just in time to see what an ostrich does with its lunch. Rare specimens of alligators are featured here, their hides being in demand for the making of fancy leathers. Alligators are the largest living reptiles, and over 6,000 of them are protected and cared for on this farm. In devouring their food, they often roll over and over with it in their mouths, the purpose being to break it or tear it apart before eating it, as they do not seem to be able to chew food as other animals do. And here we meet a colored giant who gives us an exhibition of courage and strength that defies the tall stories that we have heard about man-eating alligators. In a situation like this, the tail of the alligator is more dangerous than the mouth, as most of the animal's strength is in its tail. Returning to the city by way of one of the original Spanish gates, we visit what is perhaps the most interesting landmark in St. Augustine, Fort Marion, a historic structure which was known as Castle San Marcos during the Spanish rule, but was changed to its present name after coming in possession of the United States. Here again, the native sons of St. Augustine lend color and interest to a national shrine, which takes us back to the days when all America was evolving into a land of great republics. The armies of the old world that once dominated our country are to us but the ghosts of yesterday, merely reminding us of a liberation from force and dictatorship, which is now the priceless heritage of all those who are fortunate enough to live under the protection of the Stars and Stripes.